record button.
All
Welcome,
right,
everyone.
I'll be doing a bunch of screen sharing for this.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the ABCs of D&D and Roll20 for players with Master Thurat. This class runs until 10-ish or later.
It may take closer to 2. It may take closer to 2 hours.
11. This class is
see.
being recorded and will be available on YouTube later. If you have any questions about this topic, please visit the Discord in the Arts and Sciences channel after the class ends. Take it away, Master Thurat.
Alrighty, so thank you everybody for attending, and those that might be watching this later. I hope you find it useful. My name's Thurat. Been in Bell for 14, almost 15 years, and I do a ridiculous amount of tabletop gaming, and figured that I could try and spread the level around a little bit. So in this class, what we're going to be covering is kind of an introduction to Roll20, which is a fairly popular virtual tabletop. I'll start sharing my screen here. There we go. And if you haven't already done so and would like to follow along on Roll20, I'm going to be using that for a lot of the examples here. And when we cover Intro to Roll20, it'll obviously be useful to be in it. So if you don't already have an account, go ahead and go to roll20.net and make an account. It's free, it's quick, pretty simple. Hi, Frith. And then if you look in the chat here in Zoom, I've dropped a link to my D&D resources folder. This will probably not be available after Battle for the Ring. I imagine we'll clear out this drive, so if you want to keep it, download it. But I've got the tabletop gaming orientation Word doc in there. I'll be using this to kind of guide the class. And let me close out of all my emails here. And it's got a good handful of links that I'll go over that'll be useful, and then the itinerary for the intro for new players and intro for DMs. And then inside the D&D resources folder, you'll find character sheets of a few different varieties that we'll go over, some helpful cheat sheets. If you are a brand new player, whenever we get to the combat section, I'll bring this up, but having the player reference document up will be quite helpful. And even just when you're playing, having this up in a tab or printed, whether you're playing in person or online, is super helpful. The rest of this stuff is mostly DM cheat sheets there. In manuals, I have the 3 core books that you'll need. For players, you'll only really need the player's handbook, but if you're looking to get into running the game, the DM's guide and the monster manual are useful. And then Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide and Volo's Guide to Monsters are a couple of nice expansions that'll give you some more character options and class options, which we'll get into more in a little bit. In MISC files, another really useful document for new players is Matt Mercer's player reference sheet. It's a bit more dense than the quick reference guide that I showed just a little bit ago, but it covers all of the major mechanics that you'll run into in a game of D&D, different actions that you can take when you're in combat, what you can do, and it has page references for anything that you might want to expand upon. So a lot easier than thumbing through an entire manual when you're sitting at the table. Another useful thing in here for new players is the shop catalog. And it's also great for DMs as well, but it gives you an idea of items that can be bought in D&D, how much they may cost, and in what kind of locales you might find them. That'll vary, of course, from DM to DM, but it'll give you a good idea if you're wanting to pick something up in your adventures playing. And need something to reference back to. Modules is just a bunch of pre-made games that um, I've obtained mostly for free off of DM's Guild, which is an awesome resource for getting ready-made modules to play. I'm a lazy DM, and I very much like other people doing the work for me. The pre-made characters are exactly that. So if you don't feel like rolling a character, but your friend is running a game with third level characters, you can jump in here, grab want to be a half elf bard. All right, I'm a level 3 half elf bard, and I have an entire character sheet with no work. There's nothing wrong with being lazy in D&D. We're here to have fun. Starter sets, more D&D stuff, and then some basic maps. So that is the resource kit. I said, feel free to download that at the end of the weekend. It will probably not be there. From here on out, I'm probably just mostly going to be referencing the orientation sheet. But that is the quick down and dirty of what we'll be going over. And for anyone that didn't have a Roll20 account, I hope I've given you a little bit of time to do that. Is anyone here genuinely a new or newer player for tabletop gaming or D&D in general?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, I am.
Okay, cool. So just so I have an idea of like what I'm working with, so I know like maybe how in depth to go or maybe not necessarily go. What is each of your like experience levels, I guess, relative with tabletop gaming, and what game systems have you played in if you've played before? Start with Baba.
Yeah, so I've played a handful of one-shot D&Ds. I never actually made it through a full campaign off the ground, and I've spent a lot of time coordinating with some friends, making a few of our own campaigns, but I've never actually gotten to play a full campaign in D&D all the way through. I'm also vaguely familiar with Pathfinder just because I first started trying to get into this with D&D 3.5.
Okay. And I guess just go, I don't know if it looks the same to everybody, left to right. Queenie would be next on my screen.
I used to have like a beginner's campaign that never really took off. It was like months in between sessions. I feel like I never really grasped the rules or character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I'm beginner.
Alrighty. What about you, Frith? You're muted.
Hopped in late, had to download Zin on this computer. Sorry, I've been on Roll20 too. And so anyway, I play a lot of tabletop role play. In fact, I'm using it as part of my curriculum with my second grade student that I'm homeschooling for math. I'm running a campaign with him, and he's trying his best to make his campaign for me. It's pretty great. It's adorable.
That's awesome.
But I've played a lot of Pathfinder. I've played some 5e. I grew up playing D&D.
So you're just here to get some D&D content?
Free stuff.
Yeah, don't feel obligated to stay if you're just
No,
there
I'm
for the
mostly trying to
resource
find the
folder.
download button on your resources, but I don't see it.
Oh, so if you look at my screen share, if you just click the down arrow here at the top, if you're at the landing page, you can download right here.
Okay, thanks. Cool.
But I appreciate your honesty.
I'll take your stuff, man.
by all means. And how about you, Zen?
I've played none of the games.
Okay.
I've done like a couple of board games, but no, nothing like D&D.
Oh, right on. All right. Well, I'll try and not rush too much. I swear this is decaf, so I'm not getting hyper caffeinated going into this. So for anybody that is going to be following along in Roll20, that is where I'm going to start us. Roll20 is not the best virtual tabletop in the world, but it is free and it is widely available. And for the player, it's pretty intuitive to use. So you'll see a lot of games ran on here. A couple of other common ones are Foundry, Fantasy Grounds. Some people play in Tabletop Simulator, but none of those services are free. And they require a download. I believe all three can be found through Steam. And then I believe that D&D Beyond, which is Wizards of the Coast's online, like official content site, has a tabletop of some sort, but also not free. So Roll20 is both very loved and hated in the tabletop community. So does anyone that wants to make a account and follow along step by step still need time to do that? Or is everyone good? Thumbs up. All right. So if you've made an account from your homepage, and I've got a bunch of recent games, but if you're brand new, you'll probably just see their landing page. But if you hover over games, click the down arrow there, and go to My Games, it'll take you to this page here. And if you're new, you won't have any of that. But we're going to go to Create New Game. Now, as a player, you won't have to do this. But to get familiar with the ins and outs of Roll20, it's going to be easier for you if you're in a game. If you don't want to go through the trouble of making one, that's totally fine. I'll be dropping the link for this game I'm about to make in the chat, and you can just jump in if you want to My Game. So we're going to create a new game, and we're just going to call this BFTR class example, and go down to the optional character sheet, and you can select character sheets, a significant number of character sheet types based on different games, but we're going to be using the D&D 5e by Roll20 character sheet so that when we make characters within the game, it's easy to use. If you've bought a bunch of content or something like that, you can get fancy with letting Roll20 make modules, build things out for you, but we're just going to make a blank game right now, and we're going to create that. So that'll take us to this page here. And before we jump into the game, there's just a couple of things that can be set up. In your settings here, we can go to game settings, and please let me know if I'm going too quick. And it looks like it has a whole bunch of stuff that is excessively complicated, but it's just a bunch of options that you can add in. Everything here is pretty much good as set, but I like to mess with the default sheet settings and make sure that it's set to always roll advantage, auto roll damage, and then add all these global modifiers. These are just fields that it'll add to our character sheets when we build them to make them a little bit easier to use when we have players or characters that are adding buffs to other players. And we can save those and go back to our class.
Sorry, 1 second, Thurat. So just to clarify, so when you were creating the class example and it gave you the list of options as to which character sheet to use, was that the list of like all the like Pathfinder or whatever that were like on little thumbnails next to that?
No, so that was the modules section. So
Okay.
if
I don't think I caught how to select which one you're using for that.
okay, so let me see. Here we go. So this looks a little bit different, but in the selection, you could go in and add a book or something to your compendium to share with your players to let them use things from that. And I don't know. Oh no, once the game's made, I can't reload a module, but that's okay. I'll go back real quick and just show you that without creating a new game. So these are modules.
Okay.
So when we get into Roll20, you'll see how you can make pages and stuff like that, and make maps and build out games. But if you don't want to go through all of that work, because it can be really time consuming on the DM side of things, you can also just purchase a module from the marketplace on Roll20, and
Okay.
it shows some popular ones. Some of these are free, and it'll build. It's already built. You don't have to do anything except get in there and run the game. So like I've built Curse of Strahd, or bought Curse of Strahd. It was $25, and it has every single map, every single monster, every single handout already preloaded into it. All of the NPCs are preloaded, and it's such an expansive campaign. It's a very long campaign, so it would have taken me dozens of hours to build this game out myself. It was well worth the $25 to have someone else already have done that for me.
Okay, so that was my other question. Are you gonna go into in detail about, like, if you wanted to use one of those modules as a skeleton and then kind of alter it from that, or is that something that you would do on, or, like, are we not going to cover that today?
That's going to be more on the DM side of things. And I may run the DM class again. I need to look at my schedule for the weekend, since we're restructuring the D&D games, since we didn't have very many players interested in that. But that is exactly what I do. Like, if I've got a campaign that I own that is pretty close to what I want to run, or if it just has a ton of maps that I can just kind of shoehorn into different sections, I absolutely repurpose campaigns that you already own. Super
Okay.
easy, and be a lazy DM. It's totally fine. So anyway, jumping back to our game settings really quick, you don't really need to mess with your token settings too much. I'm going to really quick, since I'm going to be the one doing the examples here. But let's see. That'd be 60. Alrighty. I don't need to add in compendiums. Alrighty. So sorry for the delay on that. And let's go ahead and jump into Roll20. So I'm going to get the invite link here. So if you're going to run a game and need to invite people, you can snag your invite link from this here. But I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat as soon as I find that. All right, so I've dropped the link to this game here in the chat. And if you click that, you can join it, or again, you can follow along here. You'll probably have about 10 to 30 seconds of ads on the page, depending on how fast things load for you. I have a paid account, which really just benefits the DM. It takes away ads, and then it gives me a few extra handy tools that aren't necessary, but make the game a little nice, like dynamic lighting. But it's not something we have to get into right meow. So let me grab my itinerary out here, and let's see. So here in Roll20, I'm just going to go over some of the basics of the system. So first, I'm going to go over to my settings, and I'm going to go down to video and audio chat options, and I'm going to turn that off, because Roll20 has pretty notoriously bad video and audio. It doesn't have very high bandwidth, and it tends to just kind of lag pretty terribly. So for my games personally, I do audio video through Discord, and then turn that off in Roll20. I was getting feedback on myself for some reason. I have no idea what it was doing, but Anyway, so basics of Roll20. If you're a player, your DM will assign you a character sheet to use, and get you a token set up, but so you won't have a whole lot of work to do. Let me see. I'll just make this controlled by all players. And I'm just going to make all of these tokens here that are on the field controllable by all players, so that you can kind of mess around and get a feel for what it is like to move around in the tabletop here. All of the squares here represent, well, it really depends on the map that you're using, but typically they represent 5 feet. And in D&D and other similar tabletops, the squares of movement that you have, or your relative space to other players and monsters and such becomes pretty important, or it can be anyway. So that's where a virtual tabletop comes in handy. Like if you're trying to do a combat and you have a range of 30 feet to throw a chair at somebody, you kind of need to know like where you are in relation to them. So if Bruner, our dwarf here, wanted to throw a chair 30 feet at this snobby looking high elf, he's just barely within range, and that's important to know, especially if you're in a bar fight. So that's our tabletop. You can scroll in and out to go up and down, and you can hold control and zoom in and out to get in and out, zoom on your tabletop, or use the slider here on the left side of the screen. Pressing and holding left click on the map will give you a ping, which is a useful way to show other players what's going on. Or if you're trying to explain something to your DM, be like, oh, here, I want to attack this particular monster. So Bruner's like, I want to attack that snobby high elf instead of that snobby high elf. It could be important. If you look at the left side of the screen, as a player in this game, yours will be a little bit more simplified. But your next useful tool here is your draw. You don't necessarily need to use this, but if you're trying to express, something, or maybe if you just have a section of the map that's not being used and you're trying to keep track of something, you can draw freely on the tabletop. There is no eraser option. Everything that gets drawn becomes an object, so like a vector. But you can draw shapes, draw lines on the tabletop, and then they can be selected and deleted. You can change your paint color and so on and so forth there. Next useful tool going down this left side here is the ruler tool. This will let you measure distances. So if, for example, we had a simple map here, let me throw down some brown. Say we're going through a canyon. Let's build out a little map for our players here. And, you don't have to have any fancy maps when you're playing, and some DMs won't bother using anything map-wise. They might just come in with their pen tool and throw something together and say, all right, cool, that's, gonna be good enough for that. And then we're gonna grab, I don't know, like a handful of these guys and say that they are up there, and boom, that could be a simple encounter. Oops. I guess I pasted a lot more of these guys. You guys are screwed than I thought. That could be a simple encounter right there. So say our elf right here was trying to determine, am I in range to shoot this guy here in the back? Let me switch back to my tool there and ping it. Let me switch my color to, I'll have to do that elsewhere. You can measure range by switching to your range tool, clicking your start, and then dragging out to around anywhere, and you can get a feel for how far it is. So that's within 30 feet. So maybe that's within range for the ranged weapon that character might have. Or maybe this dwarf wants to get up there on top of this little hill, but has to go around because this is not passable terrain, and wants to figure out how much movement will it take me to get there. So you can drag that out, and well, that doesn't do you much good once you hit here. But if you right click, it creates a pivot point, and now you can continue going. So maybe we come out here, right click, and it would take me 90 feet of movement to run all the way around and get that particular guy. So it can be a useful tool to figure out where things are. And then the final tool on this left side that's going to be important for players is the dice roller. You can come over to your chat box here and type some simple stuff like /roll 1d20 plus 2. And it's going to roll a d20 in the chat plus 2. But if you don't want to type anything out, you can just hover over your dice roller, and I can click a d20 and it'll roll for me. I rolled a nat 1. Or I can click 2d20 and roll 2 of them, or 3, or I can roll a d100 or what have you. So you've got a whole lot of stuff that you can do easily there, or you can get kind of fancy in the chat with it. But let me get back on my itinerary here. So does anyone, I feel like I might have gone a little quick there. Does anyone have any questions so far in interacting with the tabletop? Thumbs up, we're good? Cool. So jumping over to the right side of the screen, I'm going to go across the top bars here just to get us familiar with what we have available. So chat's pretty simple. You can chat to players. You can chat to specific players, just like you would in pretty much any text-based forum or chat room /w use your whisper. So I could whisper to Queen Poppy, and no one else is going to be able to see that. Or if you want to whisper to your GM, you can type /WGM, and only the GM or the game master DM is going to be able to see that. /EM is your emote, and it'll display whatever your display name is, and then an emote. If you're, say, not using voice, or if you're just trying to do something flavorful while other people are talking, you can add it into the chat via that. And then I've got the commands for the dice rollers over in that itinerary there, and covered whispering. So not a whole lot to be done with chat. You can get kind of fancy with your dice rolls in that, but that's really the basics. Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat what those commands were?
Oh, sure. If you bring up the itinerary, I do have them typed out, but I'll drag. Did that come onto my screen, or am I only sharing one tab?
One tab.
Okay. Does that show it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if you go down into the intro to Roll20 part of the tabletop orientation, I've got those basic commands right here with kind of a little explanation of how they'll work. But oops, didn't mean to move that. And Roll20 does have like intro stuff, but it's not always the best, and some of it bugs out. So, and it can be a little confounding. As I said, they're free. So, excuse me. So /EM is our emotes. /roll, and then you can roll however many dice of whatever type. So say I want to roll 4 D10s. it'll roll 4d10s for me and add them all up. And you can get fancy with like, roll 4, drop lowest 2 and stuff like that, but that is beyond my understanding of it. And honestly, it's easier just to roll it and then do the mental math, unless you're doing some crazy game that uses like 800 dice or something. For our intents and purposes here, slash rolls is good. You can do bracketed roll, 1d20, and it'll give you an inline roll that doesn't have the dice laid out. If you don't want to see dice, I guess. But anyway, I think I rambled a little bit there. Did that answer your question about the chat commands? Awesome. So going across the top here, the next tab that is going to be available to you is going to be the journal. So that is this tab that looks like a little newspaper. The journal is where you're going to find character sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and create a character sheet right now. Your DM will have to create a character sheet for you and then assign it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and make this character sheet and make it editable by all players. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that and then get back in here. And where's my clone button? There we go. 1, 2, 3. We're just going to make some clones of these and rename them. I guess I could have just named them after people who are in this chat to make it easy for you to know who's messing with what. So until your DM creates these, they won't be visible in your journal and you won't be able to do anything with them. But once you do have them up, oops, I'm in the wrong one. There we go. Nope, I did it again. There we are. And we have Sven. All right. So those should all appear in your journals now, and you'll be able to see them. So that's if you have your character sheet in Roll20, that's where it'll be stored. Not everyone chooses to use this, but it can be pretty useful. There's a few neat features that'll let you like do auto attacks and stuff, which are once again excellent for lazy players and lazy DMs alike. I am both, and I like using tools that make my play more play and easier. So I'm gonna jump into Abe here and go over how to use your character sheet. So if you do like I did and accidentally minimize it, you might be clicking it and wondering, where's my character sheet? Maybe I'm the only one that does stupid things and doesn't know how to undo them. But if you look out here onto my tabletop, you'll see I've got a little minimized Abe right here. So clicking it here will do nothing, but it does bring it up that it is minimized. If I exit out of it and click it again, it will continue to bring it up minimized. And if you're like me and don't know how to undo that, you'll just stare at the tabletop before you reload it and your stuff shows up again. But if you double click it, it brings up that tab. Double clicking it again minimizes it, and that goes for any of the handouts that you'll have available. So easy to mess up. So once you're into your character sheet, going to the top, you can go to edit, and that's where it's going to let you edit your name, and you can select a token to assign to it. So I'm going to select this Minotaur and say I'm going to use that token, and I could upload a picture, enter some bio stuff, but that's all kind of flavor stuff at this point. If you're going to build your character in Roll20, you've got two options, and we're going to go to the character sheet tab. So if you've opened your tab or your sheet and looked across the tab, you'll see character sheet, and you get a few options. You can edit the sheet directly, which will let you just punch everything in if you're not too worried about, or if you know exactly what you want to do and maybe what you want isn't available within Roll20. but I'm going to use the Charactermancer here to show you exactly how that works. So Charactermancer uses the SRD, which is Dungeons and Dragons free shit. They could have just simplified it and called it that, but they call it the SRD, and it's the standard reference document. It's the D&D free shit. So it's a bunch of the basic classes, races, and abilities. It's kind of limited. So if you're trying to use anything beyond the very basics, you're going to have to edit your sheet directly. But if you just want to make something quick and dirty, or just something to get yourself started, it's a good place to start. So I'll get a little bit into choosing different races, and you can see SRD here. But really, when it comes down to it, the race that you choose is entirely flavor. In 5th edition, it'll modify your stats very minimally. We're talking, a couple of points, and so it's really just a matter of what you want your character to be, or what you want your character to look like. So if I go into my manuals here and bring up my handy dandy player's handbook, you can see at the beginning it's got some ability score summaries, and you'll see, like, if I'm a mountain dwarf, I'll get +2 to my strength. And boy, I think that's all they get. But it's a nice +2. But it doesn't really affect your character from that point out, except for flavor. Like if your DM says any, non-human passing classes are going to have a hard time, maybe, they're playing some sort of grimdark, anti-monster, anti-non-human campaign, that might play a role. But really it's just, what do you want to, be? What do you want to envision your character looking like? Otherwise, there's not really a whole lot to dig into there. Gnomes and halflings are, I believe that they are small size. Yeah. So that will affect some of the things you can do. For example, if you're trying to grapple somebody in the game, you can only grapple somebody one size bigger than you. So if you're trying to grapple a large monster, it's not going to work well for you. But if they're trying to grapple you, you're going to have a bad time. So don't be a gnome in a fight with a troll or something. But it could be fun. The smaller races also have less speed. Gnomes are kind of slow. Dwarves are kind of slow, but it's 5 feet. But they'll get, some trade-offs for that. So I guess there is more to race than I just said. I apologize. So, for example, gnomes, they're a little bit slower. Most classes can move, or races can move 30 feet in a round, which we'll get to in a little bit. So they're a little slow, but they're accustomed to living underground, so they get dark vision. So if the world is completely dark, it's night out, they don't need to be walking around with a torch. They can see in front of them just fine. They'll also have different racial abilities. So for gnomes, they have gnomish cunning, which gives them advantage on all intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws against magic. Which see you later, Frith. We'll get into when we get into game mechanics. So I guess I take it back when I said that it's entirely flourish or flavor. Read through and kind of go you can kind of go over like different abilities and racial abilities that the different races can give you. Dragonborns get a cool breath weapon that doesn't really scale with leveling. Elves don't have to sleep an entire night through. They only have to meditate for 4 hours. But going over all of that would take up quite a lot of time. In my opinion, choose the flavor that you want when you're making a character first, something that's going to be fun for you. If you just try to choose like what's going to give you the best abilities and best stats and stuff, I mean, for some people, that's what they want. You can power game. That's totally fine. But if you're wanting to like get fun and flavor out of it, try not to let like the abilities come in on you. Every class and race is balanced in a way that they are relevant in the game, and there's really no wrong way to build a character. You're gonna have a niche that you fill. Um, Alignment is something that's extremely objective, and it is fluid. So I think that brings up a point I want to cover before we go too much farther. And it's important when you're building your character that you remember the what I consider anyway the golden rule of D&D, and it applies to DMs and players. And this is not even just D&D; it's tabletop gaming. It's playing Risk with your friends, or it's playing D&D or Pathfinder or Super Smash Bros. Before you're a player and before you're a DM, before you're a strategic master crushing all of your friends at Risk in a 4-hour game and making them cry. You're there as friends to like come together and play a game together and have a good time. And even if you can do something within the rules or within the confines of the game that you're playing, it doesn't mean that you necessarily should. We are all the arbiters of fun at the table, and that includes other people's fun. And in the case of tabletops like D&D, it also includes the DM. So for example, in my games, I don't disallow power gaming, because if somebody enjoys building the most efficient, maximized, min-maxed character that they can build, that's the way they enjoy the game, and I don't want to impinge on like their ability to have fun. But it's with the understanding that, hey, it's not fun for me if you nuke like that cool boss that I spent an hour like writing a backstory on in 2 rounds. I would appreciate it if you'd let me like have a little fun with it. And if you're a super awesome power gamer and like you can nuke the boss in 1 round, the other players at the table aren't going to have a lot of fun with that. They want to throw some punches too. So in everything that we do, playing the game, you need to think about how you're going to synergize with other people at the table. And is it going to be in the interest of everybody having fun? Or is it just in the interest of you having fun? So that really ties back into alignment, in that you can play a lawful good paladin who follows the law, but sometimes you got to suspend disbelief just a little bit more than you already are role playing at the table, and let the rogue do something without you, chopping their head off. Or you can play, an evil character without just running around murdering people. Um, Alignment is it'll give you an idea of how you want to play your character, but um, it doesn't supersede, the golden rule of don't be a dick. Uh, and remember that you're the arbiter of fun for everyone else at the table. Don't get too hung up on it, and it's something that can change. Languages, as long as you've got common, you're pretty well in the bag for everything. Otherwise, it's just, if you're an elf, you'll get to speak Elvish. If you're a gnome, you can speak Gnomish. If you're a goblin, you can speak Goblinoid, or whatever language they're speaking. Orcs speak Orcish. And you can get different things that'll let you add more races based on like your class or intelligence. But they don't come up all that often in most games. And then, as I said in here, you've got your racial abilities, and then sometimes you'll have subclasses. We'll just go ahead and be a snooty high elf and say that we also speak halfling. Why not? Getting into classes is probably for new players. I think it can be kind of a very intimidating thing when you're getting into D&D, because there are a lot of classes, and there can be a lot to know about them. So you can be flipping through the player's handbook, looking at all of these different feats and abilities and spell slots and all that, and it's like, man, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. But it kind of goes back to what I said about race. every class is going to have its own thing that's going to make it unique and going to give it some extra bonuses and buffs. But in the long run, they're all built to be balanced to a certain point so that you can be relevant, at least in D&D, in 5th edition. It's a very simplified form of the game. So when you're building your character, think about kind of where you want to go and just look at the, kind of the, the flavor text for the classes, and, think about what kind of race you want to be and what kind of class you want to be. And, kind of go from there. Barbarians hit things real good. And as they level up, they get to hit things even better. Bards are musical and kind of sneaky and like mirthful characters that do a little bit of magic and a little bit of combat, like melee combat. Clerics are, religious devouts of some sort that do a lot of casting, usually support. Druids can do a bunch of cool stuff, or nature based, like cast, moonfire down from the sky on enemies, or wild shape into a bear and maul things. So on and so forth. I don't want to muddy us up too much. But in general, you can break it down into, do I want to cast magic or do I want to hit things? And there's going to be some flavor of that in a mix of each of these classes. Let me jump back over here to my character creation, so I make sure that I hit all of the high notes there. All right. I am kind of jumping around a little bit. I apologize for that. There we go, character creation. So I talked a little bit about classes, races, and racial abilities. So we're just going to go ahead and just choose a cleric here. And proficiencies I'll talk about with, or is anybody following along building a character? Okay. Good. So I'll just
Not
kind of
currently.
all right, cool. I'll just kind of speed through this part then and just choose some random stuff because I'm going to talk about these mechanics here in a little bit. But I want to get to ability score rolling. So ability score rolling is has really 3 different ways that it can be done. And it talks about it real well here in the very first part of the player's handbook. Let me find my table. There we are. So the most common one that DMs will use is the roll 4, drop 1. So you roll 4d6 and you drop the the lowest. So if I did it in Roll20, I'd roll 4d6, and I don't know how to do the drop lowest. But in this case, I've got 3, 2, 6, 2. So I'll drop one of those 2s off, and that gives me an 11. So I would then assign it to one of my slots. And this kind of goes back to like your race and your class, which if you're trying to finagle things the best, you would roll your stats to start. So then you can kind of maneuver it so the stat buffs that you get from your race can maybe bring up a lower score. But let's just assign it randomly and say I got, that 11, and I'm not going to roll all of those out, but that's what you would do. You'd fill in everything to get your full stat score. The other way of going about it is point buy, which you get 25 points and you have your table of point costs, and you have a base of 8 in every stat that you can't go below. And then you allocate based on what you can afford. So easy way to build up a set of scores without risking rolling something super low. Like for example, if I decide to roll and I roll straight 2s, I'm only going to have a 6, and that's not really going to help me with rolling for anything, which it shows right here. So if your stats give you bonuses, which will come into play when you're attacking things, when you're making checks, things like that. Um, so generally, you want to avoid having negatives to your roll because the dice gods are already going to hit you right at the very worst moment. So having a negative tacked onto that doesn't help you any, though it can make for some funny moments. Like when the gnome with a strength of 7 with a negative, what do we have there? -2. Yeah, is trying to wrestle the dwarf. It's probably not going to go well, but it's going to be pretty amusing. But we're just gonna punch 10s in here so we can get this character finished up. And backgrounds is something I actually do need to cover a little bit. And your background is another way of adding flavor to the character. But beyond just that, it's also going to give us some extra proficiencies, extra language, and some extra starting equipment. And it gives you kind of an idea of how to fill out your character a bit more robustly. So, maybe you've, decided that you're going to make an elven fighter or something like that, but you're having a little trouble building out their background, or, what's this character going to be like when I play them? And your backgrounds can give you kind of a free like inspiration. So say we make a ranger, uh, and we're trying to figure out, how did they get started? You can read through the different backgrounds. Um, None of them really affect the game super much. But say we decide, like, all right, this ranger grew up in the wilds, and so they're going to get the Outlander background. So it's going to give us some perks. Yeah, whenever we have to do skill checks in athletics or survival, we're going to be proficient, which just means we get a bonus to doing things related to that, like climbing a rope or trying to find animal tracks. And then it gives us a little bit of gold and some stuff. And then it gives you some suggestions for, what kind of personality might that kind of character have. So if you don't really know exactly what you want to go for with it, it's a great place to start. It's by no means mandatory. I often don't use the suggested personality traits. I usually have an idea of like what I want to do with a character myself, but don't ever pass up on taking a background of some sort because it's 2 free proficiencies and some free stuff. And that's only going to help your character out, even if it isn't necessarily playing into like what you have going on in your head. Um, So SRD is only going to give us the acolyte background, so that's what we're taking. We'll just grab 2 random languages, and I don't have to even choose any of that stuff. And then we get into the starting equipment. I'm sorry if this is kind of slogging. I realize that there's a lot of information going through character sheets and going through like getting started in D&D. And the purpose of the class is not that you will walk away completely proficient, but when it comes time for you to sit down at a table and play a game, it's just like reading the textbook before going to class, except that the textbook for D&D is a little bit too dense for that. But it's going to give you an idea of like, oh, yeah, I remember what a class does, and I remember what a race does, and I remember like how equipment works. So when you get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm going to sit down at a table, you aren't trying to learn this kind of slogging stuff as you play, because the play itself is super simple and the concepts will get picked up, but it's nice to have an upper hand when you sit down. So your starting equipment is what your class gets to start with, which if you dig through the player's handbook, it'll tell you. So if I say start with my class equipment, it'll give me an option of a warhammer or a mace, and then give me a selection of armor, a pack. Always go with the explorer's pack. And then a few extras based on my background. Or your DM might choose to give you starting wealth instead, where you roll on a table for how much gold you start with, and then you go back to your handy dandy resource folder that you have saved, and you go shopping and be like, all right, I'm going to buy this dagger that at normal cost is 2 gold, and I'll take a hand axe, 3 javelins, a set of leather armor, deck yourself out how you want to do. Or, DM might have a different idea of how things start, but usually it's going to be one of those two, or they'll sometimes give you the option. We're just going to take class equipment to make it easy. And then we get into spell casting. So if you're going to play a spell cast, a fighter, your job is pretty easy. If we go to one of our pre-made fighters here, let's see, here we go, our snooty high elf fighter. Your job's pretty easy right here. You hit things with the weapons you have, and you really don't have a whole lot else going on for you at like level 1. You get some bonuses to hitting things, but that's really about it. And if we go to a not magically inclined race like the elf, let's see, do we have a human fighter here? Here we go. Humans are basic and boring. He doesn't get any of those racial classes or racial abilities. He just gets to hit stuff and regenerate some health. But if we take a look at our sorcerer, say, now you start dealing with spells and stuff, which can get, at least for me, like that was probably the most confusing part of starting D&D, but I also love playing spellcasters because it's kind of the coolest part of D&D. So when you're getting into your spell casting and stuff like that, I'm going to be going off of the orientation sheet here for just a little bit. Let's see, spellcasters. You've got a few things that you need to know. So when you come to spellcasters, you have 2 different types of spells. You have prepared spells and known spells. And that's going to be based on what your race, or rather not your race, your classes. So your classes that just know all of their spells, like a druid or a cleric, don't get to just have all of their spells in their head. Like that's a lot of spells, right? You got an entire spell list. So every day you prepare a list of spells that your character knows for the day. You've written them down in your spell book, or you've, tabbed them or committed them to memory. You've prepared yourself for the day with your big ass list of spells that you know. So you've prepared for the day. Any spellcaster that has to learn spells as they go, those are the ones that just know spells. And that'll make a little bit more sense as you get into building a character, but it was something for me, at least, that was difficult to comprehend. So if you know your spells, you just get to use them, and it'll be based on spell slots that you have. Learning spells is something that'll happen as your character levels up. So if we look at our sorcerer, we can see that at first level, he has 2 spell slots, and he only knows 2 level 1 spells. So he could cast Magic Missile, and that'll burn one of those spell slots. He could cast it again, or maybe he could cast Shield, or cast Shield twice. So that's how spell slots work, and our first level spells work. Sorcerers don't have this big old list of spells that they know or from the get-go, so they don't prepare spells. They just have spells that they know and they get to use. And after that, it's just based entirely on, do I have the slots to do that? Another way of thinking about it is, if you think about spoon theory with like mental health, like, it takes so many spoons to clean the kitchen and to do the laundry and stuff. You can say spells are the same way. Like, it takes so many spoons to be able to cast Magic Missile. And so it'll burn up one of those level 1 spoons. And then you do it again, and now you're out of spoons for the rest of the day until you take a rest and sleep it off. Cantrips don't take any spoons. You can just shoot those off willy-nilly and keep going. So like Ray of Frost, you hold your hand out, you shoot frost at and your enemies, does a little bit of cold damage. And you can just finger gun that at people all day, as long as you have, the action to do it. As you level up, say we get to 5th level with Sorcerer, now we have all of these spells that are known up in here, but we are limited by our spell slots in what we can do. And we can't use the spell slots to cast higher level spells, but we can use the high ones to cast lower level ones. Gets kind of deep when you get into casters. So I'd say if you're really uncertain with mechanics, or that's just not really how your brain tends to wrap around things, I would go with more melee based characters to start out. But honestly, by the time you get to this point, this many levels in, you'll be pretty well on your feet. So it looks intimidating, but level 1's still pretty manageable. I think that's really all I need to talk to about that. When you burn spell slots, you gain them back when you get to take a long rest. If you prepared a bunch of spells, like with, say, our cleric, who just has our druid, who just has an entire list, it'll talk about the spells that you have prepared. Every day, you can choose new spells to know for the day, or every time you finish a long rest, which is just sleeping at the end of the day. And then armor effects. I'll talk about proficiencies here in a second, but essentially, if you aren't trained to use armor, a certain type of armor, then wearing it means you cannot cast spells. So if you decide you're going to be a druid and use plate mail, you're not trained in doing that. You're a druid, and you won't be able to cast any spells. So unfortunately, you can't. The battle mage tank can be a hard one to pull off, at least early on. So anyway, I'm just gonna choose some spells here from my this cleric to know from their domain, which is just their subclass. That is maybe getting a little bit deep. And we're going to go ahead and finish out this character sheet. I'm not going to punch in any of the fun abilities. It'll give me a summary at the end there. And we're going to let the Character Mancer do its thing and get us into a character sheet. So at the end here, this is what our Character Mancer did for us, entered all of this stuff in, and we didn't have to mess with any of it. So it gave me all of my common equipment that I chose. It filled in all of my racial and class abilities for me to quick reference, and it put my weapons and some of my common spells here in my attacks and spellcasting area. So let me make this a little bit bigger. And this is your standard D&D spell sheet, or not spell sheet, character sheet. And if you look back at, say, the resource folder and look at the basic character sheet, you're gonna see exactly the same thing that you see there. This one's in a little bit of a different format, but here's the typical one that they're using. So it's the same one that you'd fill out on paper, just digital. So even if you're not building your character in Roll20, it's a great way to keep track of things. You don't have to worry about losing a character sheet or erasing or anything like that. And say I want to roll to hit something with my mace. I could roll a d6 and remember that I have to add proficiency and also add, strength. Let's give ourselves a strength there that'll actually give us a bonus. Not that much. But I can also just click mace and it rolls it for me. And it also rolls my damage. So I can do the same thing with, say, Cure Wounds. I can choose what level I'm going to cast that at based on the spell slots I have. And it rolls it for me. So building in your character sheet is useful if you're going to be playing your whole game here in Roll20. You can also punch in, say, your class and racial abilities. So say you don't remember what Fey ancestry gives you, or what trance does, or how long your dark vision range is. You don't have to remember it. Roll20 is going to remember it for you, and you can just come in and click. And if somebody doesn't believe you when you're like, yeah, I don't have to sleep, I'm an elf, you click the little chat bubble, it drops it into chat, and you flex on them with your fancy Roll20 character sheet. So that being said, I'm going to go over a few of the things here on the character sheet that will come up. So I mentioned proficiency a few times, and it's essentially just, you know, all of us are kind of good at something. Like we're, you know, good with the tools we use regularly, good with the things we've been trained on, and you know, we tend to do better at doing them than somebody who hasn't had that training. And that's really all your proficiencies are doing for you. Um, and You'll see those reflected in your skills. Your skill list is things that you can do um, in game. And they're kind of summarized. And if you look in the back of the player's handbook, they have a nifty chart showing, like, you know, what each of those means. But you can also jump into the cheat sheets folder and look at what some of these abilities are. So under strength, you can see, oh, that's what an athletics roll, I don't want to leave a comment, is going to do, or what acrobatics or sleight of hand or stealth. So these are a nice kind of summary of what each of those skills is going to let you do. But if you're good at doing them, you're going to get a bonus. So I can roll athletics on this character, but I only get the +2 from my strength, and that's it. So say I want to roll athletics, I click it, it rolls it for me. And I'll explain why it rolls 2 here in a moment. And then I don't have to do anything. If I hover, you can see that it already did the math for me. It added my bonus, and I'm good. I just don't get that extra proficiency bonus that sits here at the top. And you start at 2, everybody does. It goes up as you level. It's just giving you a bonus for being good at stuff. So I made us a cleric. So I'm good at history, and so knowing historical facts. Insight, knowing when people are lying to me. Perception, knowing, you know, what's going on around me. And religion, which is knowing specifics about religions. So I might run into a character, maybe we're trying to sneak into some temple, and I have to bluff my way through you know, a Alakite that has come up on the group. I could use deception, but since I'm proficient in religion, I could ask my DM, like, hey, what do I recall about this religion? And maybe they'll let me roll that instead to lie my way through something. Or, you know, maybe we come across a puzzle in a dungeon and I get to roll that to you know, figure a way through it because it's religiously inspired or something. Or if I'm trying to find my way through the wilderness, I try to survive. If I'm trying to get around sneakily, I stealth. If I'm trying to steal or pick a lock, I sleight of hand, and so on and so forth. They're all pretty straightforward, and they're based on an ability score. So knowing history is an intelligence thing. You know, you can recall information. That's intelligence. Knowing when someone's lying to you, that's wisdom. Um, so based on your ability scores and the bonuses you get, let's give ourselves some unique scores that'll actually reflect some bonuses. We'll give, we don't have a lot of constitution. You can see how we get different boons or negatives for what our abilities are, and they'll play into our skill checks. So I'm not very wise. I have a -1. So if I'm trying to figure out, is someone actually, you know, lying to me, I'm proficient in it, but I lost 1 because I'm also kind of gullible. Or maybe I cannot find my way in the wilderness to save my life because that's a wisdom check. So that's where your skills and your stats really play together. Your saving throws is if something is happening to you, based on one of the stats, you get to try and save against it in some circumstances. It's very specific. And when it does come up, your GM will say, "Give me a saving throw." So, say for example, I get into a drinking contest with a gnome in a bar. My DM might say, "Roll a Constitution to see which one of you, gets drunk and passes out first." I have a -3 to Constitution, so I'm not going to do so good in the drinking contest, or maybe against saving against a poison, or maybe someone throws something at me, and I get the opportunity to try and dodge out of the way. So I make a dex saving throw. So saving throws are you reacting to your environment. Skills are you manipulating your environment. And ability scores are how good you're going to do either of those things there, to sum it up pretty well. Getting over into your attacks, that's also going to kind of tie back into these. If you are trained with something, which your class will tell you, so like I'm trained with simple weapons, which are shown in the player's handbook. All of the equipment's broken down as far as melee goes into simple, like daggers and straight swords and stuff, or martial, which is essentially just fancy weapons like glaives or uh, giant warhammers or something like that. Um, so if I attack with something I'm proficient with, I get to add my proficiency bonus. And if I attack with something that is, say, strength based, which most melee weapons are, I also get to add my strength bonus. So that's why I get my +4 to attacking, which is hitting things. So I click mace, I rolled an at, oh no, that's a modified 20, but I roll a 20 with all of my buffs added to it, and I'm good. So that's how our weapons and stuff play back into stats, skills, and throws. So that was a whole lot thrown at you at once. Is everyone doing okay right now? I realized building this itinerary that there is a lot more to getting into the game than I recalled when I was a new player. And it was like, man, this class gets a little bit deep. So I understand if it's like, that's a lot of information. And just rest assured that, again, this is just get a passing like brush with it, so that when it's like, all right, I'm going to make a character, you aren't like caught off guard when it's like, what in the world is that? So if you feel confused, it's okay. I'm the one spouting it off, and even I got to look back at my notes and be like, wait, what was that again? Uh, it's not about knowing
Just
all
know
of
that
it. It's knowing where to
there
look
will be
for
a
it.
test at the end of this class.
What's that?
Just know that there will be a test at the end of this class.
Absolutely. So let's see where we are here. So we kind of jumped around a little bit with our skills, our weapons, tools. Tools is just using things that like a crowbar to pry open a door, or thieves' tools to pick a lock. I'm not proficient with any tools, so I'm kind of useless. But it's just like using a skill, manipulating your environment with the things that you're good at. I talked a little bit about power gaming already. So let me see. I know I missed something here. Equipment. Yeah, there's a few things to talk about with equipment. So I'm going to bring up the equipment list here in our MISC files and just talk really briefly about gear. And let's zoom in a little bit on this. So when you roll up your character, you're going to get some options for what you can use. So simple or martial weapons. Do you want to buy adventuring gear with any gold you might have, or some tools, or what kind of armor do you want to get? And first and foremost, it'll be based on what you're proficient with. If you're not proficient, you just don't get to add your proficiency bonus to your attacks. So it's not like you can't use things, you just might not be good at it. And with armor, if you're not proficient, you don't get to gain a bonus to your AC, which is your armor class. So that's essentially how hard is it for someone else to hit you. So if you're not good at, you know, maximizing the use of chainmail, you're not gonna wear it well. It's not gonna sit comfortably. Maybe you didn't put your gambeson on, so you're not gonna get as much of a bonus out of it as you could have. So just pay attention really to what your class is allowing you to use, and if you're using what you're proficient with, you're usually going to be pretty good. But you know, it's good to diversify. So actually, I'm gonna need the player's handbook for this. Oh goodness, and zoom out back to my normal. Yeah, manuals, player's handbook, and we're on like I think we're on 148 for that page. So close, but a little too far. There we go. So start with our equipment. So at the beginning of the equipment section, if we talked about, we talked about how you could roll for gold to get your gear. That's the table you would use. It's based on your class. So monks, you didn't find a whole lot of use for money in life, so you don't have a whole lot of it. But, maybe as a rogue, you've been robbing people for a while, so you might have a little bit more. Or the bard, you've been doing some good performance. Or the cleric, got some tithing and stole it from peasants, the usual ways you get money. So that'll go into, let's go into equipment. So armor, again, what you're proficient with. You get to add your dex modifier to it. So you look at our armor here, and I have an AC of 14. So I'm wearing leather armor, and I have a +1 to my dex. So if we look at our tape, leather armor gives us an 11, and I have a +1 to my dex. So that is a 12, and then I get a +2 from my proficiency bonus, bumps me up to 14 right here, which it doesn't calculate for me, but that's all right. And then if you look at like stealth, if you're wearing noisy armor, essentially, it says if you try to roll a stealth roll, you get disadvantage, which means you do your roll twice and you have to take your lower roll. Conversely, if something says you get advantage, like you're in a really advantageous position, you roll twice and you get to keep the highest. So that's why when I was rolling all these, it was rolling 2. So that's just your regular roll. And if you had disadvantage, you would take the lower of the 2 rolls. And if you had advantage, you would take the higher of the 2 rolls. Otherwise, you just take your left column. Or if you're just rolling, you could just roll 2d20 or do roll 1d20 twice. And apparently it's forgiving of typos. So that's nice. Getting into your weapons, you have essentially 2 major types of weapons. You have weapons that use dexterity and weapons that use strength for attack. If it is a finesse weapon, which it'll tell you in your weapon table, like a dagger or a rapier, it just means you get to use whichever one you want to use. So if I was using a dagger, I could choose between my strength or my dex for getting a bonus, and I'm going to take my strength because it gives me a better bonus. That's all that means. Light weapons are weapons that are lightweight, which lets you dual wield them or use one in each hand, which is unique to light weapons. Otherwise, you're just holding a weapon in your offhand for funsies. So, for example, if I had 2 daggers or a couple of, I think, short swords. I think those are also light weapons. Where's our short sword? I can't scan that quickly, but we got a hand axe there. So if I wanted to use a couple of hand axes, I can attack with my main hand and then also attack with my offhand because they're light. Heavy weapons are just weapons that are big, and the only thing that really matters there is if you chose a small class or small race like a gnome, you can't use the 10-foot pole or the 8-foot halberd very effectively because it is like 4 times as big as you, and as comical as that would be, you're just not very good at that. So you could be the gnome running around with a halberd, but you're going to have disadvantage every time you roll with it. You're going to roll to attack, and then you're going to roll again and take the lowest one because the chances of you hitting are not so good. Loading is just for crossbows. It just means that you can't shoot a crossbow twice in a round because you got to load a bolt, unless you have an auto crossbow, which I'm not certain. I don't know if that's a regular thing in D&D, but they're definitely out there. Range means it has range. Reach means you get to hit people a bit farther away. So if we go back to our table here, say, these two are duking it out. If he's just using a short sword and she's just using a short sword, nobody can hit each other because they're more than 5 feet away. If they're both here, they can both hit each other. If our fella here just has a short sword, but she's got a glaive, which has reach, that didn't write well. Then she can hit 10 feet away. So range lets you be a little bit more maneuverable. Say, for example, this character here is kind of squishy, but has a glaive, and this character here is beefy. She could just stand behind him and whack at this guy and not be really in all that much danger if this guy's standing here just trying to soak up shots. So your ranged weapons or your reach weapons give you a little bit of extra oomph from range. Your versatile weapons will say versatile in the table here, and it just means that you can wield it one-handed or two-handed. So let's see. I can use my longsword with one hand, and if I do, it does a d8 of damage. But if I wield it two hands, versatile, it does a d10 of damage. So pretty simple. And then your ranged weapons, your range will be expressed like this. So this one is range 8320 for this light crossbow. Your first number is the range within which you can shoot somebody without disadvantage. So our light crossbow has a range of 80, but let's go with this dart. You're just throwing a dart at somebody, 2060. So move that character there. So I could throw at this guy here, bloop, there we go, without disadvantage because I have a range of 2060. So everything within 20 feet, I can hit normally. Beyond 20 feet, but under 60, I have disadvantage because you're in my max range. So normal range up to max range. Well, 80's off the screen there. Or no, it went to 60. There we go. And then beyond 60, I can't hit. So for a dart or a hand axe, that's 2060. 20 feet, I can hit that. 25 feet, I have disadvantage. Beyond 60 feet, I can't hit it. It took me a long time to understand how range worked. I don't know why. That's why I harp on it there for just a moment. Could just be me. And I think that covers weapons, armor. I'm not going to get into all of the equipment, but it's all pretty self-explanatory. It depends what your DM's doing. But in general, make sure you have food and water. It takes 1 ration a day to survive, and it takes 1 gallon of water or 1 water flask or water skin a day to survive. Um, in a casual game, a DM might not bother counting any of that and just assume that in a normal circumstance, players are going to eat and drink as necessary. But if you're playing like in a hardcore survival game, definitely make sure you're keeping track of what you've got. Otherwise, you're just kind of getting things that might be useful. Like, maybe you want to be a cheeky rogue and carry a bag of 1,000 ball bearings on you. And you can throw that at somebody. And then if they fail their dex check when trying to move across it, they fall flat on their face, which can be useful if you've stolen something and are being pursued by guards. You throw 1,000 stainless steel ball bearings in the road. It's useful. Or caltrops if you are maybe a little bit more of the spiteful type of rogue. Not the nicest, but it's going to slow people down.
Hey, Thurat,
Yes, sir.
would you mind if I jump in and make a point real quick?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that with the food and the rations and the water and all that, it's another good reason why choosing a background when you're making your character can be really advantageous for you, because there are certain backgrounds that I know give you like just free, like I think survival is one of the skills that allows you to just like kind of in the background just randomly hunt and find all the rations you need for a day. Or like I think the acolyte background gives you the option of like anytime you show up to a church that is affiliated with you, or actually it might even just be any church, I can't remember, but like they'll give you like free housing and lodging for the night and like supplies and shit. So just another good reason why backgrounds can be to your advantage when you're in the early game, especially.
Oh, absolutely. So if like making sure that you're good on, particular things, which will be based a lot on the game that you're playing, uh, based on what your DM is running, uh, those things can really come in handy. So if you never want to have to worry about food and your DM's like, I'm going to count food, you can just be like, well, I'm going to take this particular background that lets me forage for food for free. And now you don't have to carry 15 pounds of food with you to make it through a short trek between towns. But good point. Thank you. So we are getting on an hour and a half here, which is getting close to really where I wanted to kind of start cutting off. I know I said it could go to 2 hours, but um, it is getting a bit much. So I'm just going to kind of speed through a little bit of what's left here. We've made it quite a ways. We've made it pretty well through character creation. I'm not going to really cover leveling up because we're just going to look at what's going to get you kind of started. You can look at leveling as you build your character to look at what you're going to gain as you level. So you're going to gain more health based on the type of class you chose. And as you level, you can choose to add different classes. So maybe I start off as a level 1 cleric, but then I decide I'm also going to be a fighter. Maybe I say my character's been training with, the fighter in the group, and I'm really interested in pursuing the martial path. And that's something you have to take up with your DM, but it can create some really interesting character mashups. One of my favorites that I ever played was a level 1 rogue, and then I started going into sorcerer and had a really cool, fun background. So I got a little bit of stabbing in, not a lot, and then got some cool magic to throw around. Archetypes fall under leveling. As you level up, your character specializes into a particular subset of their class. And then ability score improvements. As you level, your character gets better at doing things because you've been doing a lot of things. And that can either be gaining points in a skill based on whatever your race is, or the DM can also choose to use different feats, which, unlike the two that are on your bottom of your legs, are cool things that you've learned to do in your adventures. So maybe you've learned how to wield a single weapon really well, and now you get a bonus to your armor whenever you're only wielding that weapon. That's the duelist feat, stuff like that. Getting into actually playing the game, which can get to be a lot, so I'm going to try and keep that kind of general. But role playing is one of those things I've kind of covered already. And if you just go back to the golden rule when you're playing, of make sure that you're allowing other people to have fun at the table too, and party cohesion is more important than that one particular quirk that that you chose to give your character. That is actually really important right here. My character wouldn't do that. When you're playing a game, a cooperative, storytelling game like D&D, and you say my character wouldn't do that, you have to remember that you made your character not be the type of person to do that. So when you're building your character out and fleshing out what is my character like, you can be flexible. It doesn't have to be set in stone with what you started with. And you also have to think about, am I giving my character a trait that is going to be antagonistic to the rest of the party? Or is it going to just be a constant drain on our resources or other people's fun? Like, you can make a super strict, lawful good paladin, but if everyone else is like, yeah, but we want to be kind of like, rogues and vandals, you might not be able to play that character in that game. Or, maybe you say, your character has, I don't know, this huge aversion to tieflings, but you need to work with this tiefling to get something done. Maybe your character is, uncomfortable, but if you just have them go around killing every tiefling they see and ruining like story for other players, you didn't need to make them do that. So when you say my character wouldn't do that, think about the fact that you're giving them those traits, and think about whether it adds to your character, how you can portray it without being extreme, and consider how playing your character may impact others' characters. Golden rule. Specific over general is a general rule. If a general rule says you can do something like, every round you can move up to your movement speed, but say you have a specific ability that lets you move more, the specific outrules the general. Always round down. So if you roll and it says you take half damage if you did well, like on Burning Hands, then if it ends up at 7.5, you took 7 damage, not 8. You always round down. During a game or a campaign or an adventure, your character has to rest. And that is how you regain spent abilities and things like that. So say we're adventuring with our buddy Abe here, and he gets whacked pretty good, and ends up with 5 hit points left. I guess that's not a good hit, but what have you. He's got hit dice, which are based on his level. So every time he takes a short rest, he can roll a d8, as long as he's got them available, to regain some health. So we're going to roll him 1d8 and add his Constitution mod, which is a -3. So he only gets to gain back 4, but it's enough to get him back up to his total. But he used up his hit die. So next time he takes a short rest, he doesn't get to use that again. When he takes a long rest, which is sleeping at night, he'll regain his hit die and he'll gain back all of his hit points. As a spellcaster, if he decides that he's going to burn, say, both of his spell slots and casts Bless and Cure Wounds today, he doesn't get those back until he sleeps, takes a long rest. You got to regenerate your spoons. But he can... I chose terrible cantrips. He can use those as much as he wants. They're not going to help him all that much anyway. So that covers that a little bit. Exhaustion's a mechanic that's never used. I covered advantage and disadvantage. Getting into combat, I'm just going to go over that briefly, and I'm going to just refer back to our cheat sheet. So this is the bread and butter of D&D. You're in combat, you're doing things, you're whacking stuff, and it can be the most complicated part, but it's not terribly difficult. So at the top of the sheet here is the order of combat, and this is everything you get to do on your turn. And that's pretty much it. So say you're getting into this fight and you sneak up on some people and they were not ready for it. You surprised them, so they don't get to go on that round. But if they were not surprised, you just ignore that. That's up to the DM to deal with. Don't worry about it too much as a player. So say we're getting into combat here and we've got our buddy, let's name that, but that's Gimli now. This is Evangeline, and they're squaring off against a couple of these rogues here, and they get into a normal combat. First thing you're going to do is roll initiative. So we'll roll a couple of d20s for our heroes here and add their dex modifiers, because dexterity makes you move fast and your initiative is just you moving faster in combat than everyone else, except for Gimli. He's slow and fat. So that would get added to your turn order by your DM, which I'm not gonna mess with right now. And say these guys roll 8s. They're not doing so great. So our turn order would be Evangeline with our 14, these guys with 8s, and Gimli's last with a 4 because he's slow. So going back to our turn order, it's we've rolled initiative and now it's time to take turns. And for the rest of the game, or for the rest of that combat, it's just going to keep going in that order unless something magical interrupts it, like somebody getting knocked out or an ability or something like that. So Evangeline has a few different options, and she can take these in any order that she wants and break them up. So let me see here. So movement is how much you get to move during any particular round. So if we look at our buddy Abe, he has a speed of 30 feet. Let's just transpose that onto Evangeline, and she decides that Gimli can suffer on his own. She doesn't want to die here today and retreats 30 feet. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. That's as far as she can move in that round. But say she wants to move 10 feet and then lob a dart at one of these gentlemen here, 5, 10, 15, 20. They're within range. She throws a dart, and that goes against their AC. So she rolls a 7. AC is your armor class. If it doesn't meet it or beat it, it doesn't hit. So if this guy's got an AC of 10, it doesn't hit. And then she decides, well, that didn't work, and continues retreating to leave Gimli to die alone. So the throwing of that dart was an action. It was making an attack. So your list of actions here, you can attack, cast spells, double your movement, get out of combat without someone getting a swing at you, and so on and so forth. Good stuff to read through, but attack is going to be your most common one. You get one attack action, or one regular action each round, and then you have a bonus action. Those are only special abilities, but if we look at Abe that we've transposed onto our buddy Evangeline here, we can see if he has any, or she has any bonus actions that she can cast. So Cure Wounds, let's see. Nope, that's an action. I thought I had a bonus action then in here, but I in fact do not. But it's a good time to point out that in your spells, it'll say the casting time. If it's an action, you use it when you take an action. If it's a bonus action, you use it on a bonus action. So in our files with our pre-made characters, we saw that our human fighter had second wind as a bonus action. So you can jump in use your attack action with your longsword and hit some people, get hit, and then regain some hit points. You can't use it again until you complete a long rest, but you used it. And then reactions really only apply to an attack of opportunity or special abilities that say you react. So you're reacting to things that happen in combat. The most common is when someone tries to get away from you. So say these guys move up on Gimli and he's like, well, that's not going to work for me, and decides he's going to move away. Leaving combat provokes an attack of opportunity. Well, leaving the sphere of influence of a character can provoke an attack of opportunity. So these guys, seeing him running away, get to take a free swing at him before he bamboozles off. Unless he takes the disengage action, which does not provoke attacks of opportunity. As I said, gets a little bit maybe complicated, but if you're disengaging, you're keeping your stuff up while you're backing out. Otherwise, you're turning tail and running, and you're showing your back to these guys, and they get to take a swing at you and maybe do some damage, maybe kill you. Be careful leaving combat. And then you get an interaction each combat or each round, which is something simple. You can draw or sheath a weapon, open or close a door, shout something simple to to anybody, shout an insult or maybe something useful. Just something that is quick and doesn't require a whole lot of thought. And then after everybody has had their chance to do all of these things here, it just goes back around to the top of the order until the combat's resolved. You've got a bunch of small rules that you can add into combat. Like, for example, say let's use Evangeline. She ran away and doesn't want to die. So say she's hiding behind Gimli, and this guy wants to shoot her with a bow. Since there is another player in the way, she gets partial cover. So cover, which gives her a bonus to her AC. Flanking is an optional rule. So say Gimli got left here in combat. If the DM's using it, these guys are flanking him and get advantage on their attack rolls. And then hiding and stealth don't come up too much. We talked about meets beats, and we talked about our rounds, bonus actions, and all that. And that really brings us to the end of things here. I guess the big leave off here is to just talk very briefly about, let me bring Zoom back up. There we go. About what to expect from getting out of the game. All of that is a whole lot of information to digest, but really when you sit down with a character sheet made out and start playing, it will come pretty naturally, and the other players at the table and the DM will guide you on anything that you're maybe not certain about. So if the DM says, all right, you're in combat, they're not going to expect you to just do it. They're going to say, go ahead and roll me an initiative. Or maybe if you're like, I want to look around this room, they're not going to expect you to tell them what role you need. They're going to say, all right, go ahead and give me an investigation check. Let me see what you know. What does your character know? So the DM's job is to guide you through the world that your character's in, and to determine what kind of rolls you need to make to see how you do that. So that's determining your initiative in combat, determining the skills you need to use, and stuff like that based on what you say you want to do. So as long as you're just kind of envisioning, this is what I want my character to do, they're going to guide you on how to get there. And I could get into I'll get into just a couple of deals here, because tabletop gaming tends to attract the nerdy type, just like Belagarth does. And I would say that we have a disproportionate number of people who perhaps aren't as great with social decorum than some communities, and tabletop gaming can be kind of similar. So you could expect, I guess, similar interactions, say when going to a local game shop or something like that to play. And just trying to be polite and mindful of other players and reminding people that you expect the same of them is totally reasonable and just the best way to go about things. Ultimately, the DM is the arbiter, um, the mediator at the table, and you should never be afraid to go to them and say, hey, this is a problem for me. And that can be anything. So if you're playing with somebody and they make an uncomfortable reference to something, it could be anything. If you're arachnophobic and they're going off about spiders, or the DM wants to make you fight giant spiders, you can say, hey, that's a line for me that I don't like to cross. And if we're following the golden rule, no one should have a problem with that. And if you're at a table where people can't respect like reasonable personal boundaries, then you can always find another table. You're not obligated to stay in a toxic gaming environment. Let's see. Metagaming might be something that you aren't familiar with, and that just means using out-of-game information to make decisions in game. So, for example, your character may not know how to build bombs, but you do. Your character doesn't know how to build bombs. Or maybe you saw the DM's notes and saw that, oh, I saw their map and I see that there's an enemy hiding behind that barrel. Your character doesn't know that. And using metagame information from outside of the game to influence the game is a pretty big no-go. It ruins other people's fun, and it's pretty rude. So make sure you're not letting real world information influence you too much. Other than that, if you want to find a game to play, ask friends, find some, you can be all new players and sit down with the rule books that, I've provided and figure it out and watch some videos and run a game. You don't need to go and find someone super experienced. If you're getting together to have fun, it doesn't matter if you do it right. It's going to be fun. And if you want to find like random people to play with, Roll20 has a game finder, Warhorn, which I've linked in the top of the resource guide, is a good place to find people. It's like a posting board for people looking for different games. And you can also just go into your local game shop, and usually they've got something going. It really just depends on what you're comfortable with. I was super awkward as a new player and didn't feel comfortable role playing around people I didn't know. So I stuck with playing with friends for a long time, and that's totally fine too. But anyway, I'm definitely at the end of my time now. But we've got a few minutes left. Is there any questions that anyone has that I can answer? We're good. Thank you so much for your.
I'm gonna I was sorry. I was just gonna say I was gonna leave the space open for other people to answer, but and this is kind of like not specific to the topic, but I probably definitely missed it. If there's like a schedule of like what events and classes are happening over the course of this event. So
Oh,
if you
absolutely.
would be so kind to share the link for that schedule with me, or give me similar direction on how to get to the schedule for that so that I can just kind of peruse and see what things I want to participate with, I would greatly appreciate it, Thurat.
Sure. If you go to the Discord, there is a category called Main Fire Mayhem, and there is a class announcements and
Class?
yeah, the Southern coming out in me. And an
Yeah.
announcements tab, and you'll find links to all of the upcoming classes in there, and you'll also find a link to the general schedule. But I'm going to go ahead, and there it is, and copy and paste those into the chat here. So those are up for you. Make sure you open those up before we end, because once I close the chat, you won't be able to, or close the room, you won't be able to access the chat again. So as I was saying, thank you all for attending. I hope that this was helpful and hopefully not too overwhelming. I am always a willing resource. I run games frequently. I love running one shots, which are just we get together one time, play a game, get as far as we can. And I'm more than happy to do that for new players that are maybe like, I don't really know, we don't really have a DM. Hit me up. I love DMing and getting new people into the hobby because I'm just a huge nerd. And but anyway, thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your battle for the ring. And here's to hopefully a better 2021. Any closing thoughts or comments before I close out our room here?
Yes. If you're willing to DM, which platform can we add you on in case that comes up in the future?
Oh, you can add me here on Discord. I spend entirely too much time on Facebook. If you're
Right.
over on there more,
Okay.
and I am a student, but usually evenings I'm pretty free. A single session for D&D usually takes about 4 hours. You can squeeze something into 2 hours, but it's a pretty breakneck speed, like go 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 kind of deal. So yeah, if you and like a group of people want to play, if I'd say set aside about 4 hours, and usually with brand new players, I'll do a session 0 where we all just get together and build our characters and go over some basic rules if needed. I'm totally fine DMing for kids. Usually I think around like the 10 plus age is where like it gets a little easier for them to sit at a table for that long and play a game. But I'm not a parent, so I can't say, but it's a fun creativity exercise. I got to volunteer at a kids camp for a week a couple of summers ago, and I played D&D with uh, I think they were 11-year-olds, and keeping them on track was difficult, but they had fun.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to
My-
actually try that at summer camp next year.
Mine are younger, very distractible. Like my son will just approach people in the grocery store and be like, I play Minecraft. And my daughter will approach people and say, fight. Yeah, she's not allowed to go to belt practice with weapons because she terrifies the players.
Oh,
But
that's great.
she's 7.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, she beats them up bad.
Oh, that's fantastic, though. But yeah, feel free to add me on or shoot me a message on Discord. I'm Thurat on the server.
Thurat.
Sir Thurat is Sir Master Thurat is how I have myself put in. Look, I got both. I'm gonna rep both. And just feel free to drop me a line, or you can find me on Facebook, Jesse Sell. I think I've got a dorky foam fighting picture as my profile pic.
I've already sent you a request.
Okay, perfect.
Just
Thank
remember,
you.
you're never too young to learn how to smite your enemies.
That's right. Any other closing thoughts here before we let Elena go to bed?
Thank you, Thurat. This was wonderful. We greatly appreciate you, and I hope I can spend some time chit-chatting away on Sunday, bud.
Yeah, I am free Sunday evening. If you want to do a socially distanced coffee date at Common Grounds, it would be delightful.
Hey.
Call
Sounds
it a
good,
day.
buddy. Take her easy, and if she's easy, take her twice.
Good night, Matt.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. Thank you for letting me run this extremely late, Alana.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you
right.
so much, Sir Master Thurat.
The titles are just fun.
Our classes for the evening. Have a good sleep. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.